Hey guys, what's going on? It's that time once again where Mike of Did You See That and myself talk about the Land Before Time series. And today we're finally on the 7th installment, The Land Before Time 7, The Stone of Cold Fire. We're officially at the start of the 2000s, this time around directed by Charles Grosvenor, once again starring people like Jeff Bennett, Anndi McAfee, Thomas Dekker, Rob Paulsen, Kenneth Mars, John Ingle, Jim Cummings, and many, many more. I'd like to start this off by saying a big thanks to all of you beautiful people for clicking here on this video. I've been pretty happy to see how these videos have done over the course of time. As they've sat on the channel, they might start with under 100 views, but over the course of time, they've slowly trickled on views, and I've met plenty of you guys in the comments who are actually big fans of the Land Before Time series. There are some huge Land Before Time fans out there, no matter how silly this franchise becomes as the times progress. And so, yeah, if you guys are just now hopping on, me and my buddy Mike from Did You See That have been covering each installment today, talking about the 7th installment, The Stone of Cold Fire. And for anybody who wants to check out the other videos, I'll leave a link down below in the description box where you can find a playlist to all of the other videos we've covered in this series thus far. And just for a quick wrap up, the original till this day still is my favorite. It's a film of charm that had people like Steven Spielberg and George Lucas and Kathleen Kennedy involved, as well as many others. James Horner gave a fantastic score, and it has that great charming animation of the late 80s and early 90s, and without a doubt is one of my favorite films of my childhood that I can definitely remember. And then I remember seeing some of the sequels, but I don't really remember which ones I saw, and at this point I know for a fact I hadn't even seen this far into the franchise, and I was completely stunned when I got a copy of all 14 movies, that there was even 14 movies in this franchise. So we are halfway through, and a big thanks to my buddy Mike of Did You See That for joining me in these videos, and a big thanks to you guys for clicking on these videos and joining us. Again, today we're talking about The Stone of Cold Fire, and I'm going to leave it to the trailer really quickly to give you a base premise of what this is about.
Littlefoot sees an amazing sight in the skies above the Great Valley. No one believes it's true.
Perhaps you saw a flying rock that only seemed different,
which leads the gang on an unforgettable adventure.
Thank you, trailer, for giving us that quick, brief synopsis. Yes, here we are once again with a very similar plot to the other films. Something is seen or something happens that ends up sending the kids on an adventure that ends up leaving the parents behind, bitching about what to do the entire movie, realizing the kids have gone at some point, and then the kids end up saving the day or saving themselves or getting back, and everything is a-okay, and there's a nice little message that they can take from it at the end of the movie. This time around being accountability, because one of the things that's not mentioned there in that trailer clip I just showed is the fact that we're introduced to the character of Toronto. He is the uncle to Petrie, and we end up finding out that he himself also wants to get his hands on the Stone of Cold Fire. We end up learning that the Stone of Cold Fire is actually supposed to have been a legend of some sort of mystical, magical stone that if you go and you touch it, you can gain power from it, and yada, yada, yada. So Toronto and his two other pterodactyl friends decide to go and try to get it before the kids do, meanwhile actually kidnapping Ducky along the way, which sends the kids on an adventure to go stop Toronto and his friends, as well as get their hands on the Stone of Cold Fire themselves. And what can I even really say about these movies at this point? As I've said in some of the last videos, there is a very similar energy to all these movies at this point. These movies are fun in a cute, nostalgic way for me. I enjoy, really, more than anything, spending time with these characters. I've really grown to enjoy in this rewatch of these movies and these watches of for the first time on some of these. Really enjoyed spending time with Littlefoot and Ducky and Petrie and, you know, Spike and even Sarah to a weird extent. You know, she's easily my least favorite character of the bunch. She's a complete bitch half of these movies, but I've just enjoyed spending time with these characters, no matter how cheesy or kiddie or silly these movies have been throughout the entirety of their runtime. And I'm happy to say that here with the 7th installment, I enjoyed it more than the last few. I don't think this is a fantastic film by any stretch of the imagination, but of course I'm saying that, kind of rating it in my mind based on the kind of movie it is. It's a movie of the early 2000s, in this case Case 2000. That is the 7th film in a kids series that's obviously made for not only young kids, but super young kids. And so, of course, I have to kind of keep that in mind when I'm watching and, putting this in a ranking system in my mind. And thankfully, I enjoyed this one a lot more. I found that the animation definitely take a step up compared to the other sequels. The other ones definitely had lost a little bit of the charm that the original film had, as the budget clearly was a lot less. And now that we're into the 2000s, we're seeing a little bit more of a digital animation versus what we were seeing in the 90s, which, I do enjoy the charm of 90s animation, but I am curious to see where this franchise goes as we progress with filmmaking tools. I'm really curious to see what the 14th movie looks like, because I honestly don't even know what any of those movies look like other than just some images or some of the posters. I don't know what the actual animation looks like, how fluid it is, how smooth it looks. So watching this movie, I was happy to see that the animation has definitely gotten stronger since the previous films, but the story is fairly similar. As I mentioned before, the kids go off on an adventure and the parents stick around bitching and moaning. And one of the most notable things about this movie, without a doubt, is we're introduced to these rainbow faces, as they call them in the film. Some dinosaurs that sing a song that's probably the only notable song in this film, called Beyond the Great Beyond, which I won't lie, was fairly catchy. Me and my fiance were ironically singing it with one another after the movie was done. Every here and there's a couple of really cheesy songs in these movies that my fiance and I will sing for the next 2 days or so. And so when it comes to this film, the ones that the rainbow faces were singing, without a doubt, was the song I was singing.
Beyond the mysterious beyond. Mysterious beyond. Trust in your own imagination.
The rest of the songs of this movie, as we've seen with a lot of the other films in this franchise, don't really have memorable melodies or all that exciting. They just kind of push the story forward a little bit, kind of having the characters sing about something that's happening in the moment. And more often than not, it's just goofy and silly, and I'm just having a laugh at how dumb the lyrics are and how bad the melodies are, and that these young people who clearly couldn't really sing all that well are singing kind of out of key at times. And overall, it's just kind of funny when the songs come on. Every time a song starts, the first song of each movie, my fiance and I just have a laugh because we almost forget that there's songs coming in these movies. But as I was mentioning, we have these rainbow faces, these dinosaurs, that we end up finding out at the end of the movie, spoilers, are fucking aliens, I guess. They were the ones that told Littlefoot and the rest of the gang about what the Stone of Cold Fire is, and, this, that, and the third. They had all these different fun facts and things that they knew how to do in the movie that they never really explained, and they literally would say to people that asked them how they knew these things that would be telling, so obviously implying that they don't want to tell their secrets. And at the end of the movie, we see them literally beam up to space like Star Trek and just take off. It looks like they were in a spaceship. I'm not kidding you. The Land Before Time, I think, has alien dinosaurs. No joke. But of course, I do have more to say on this movie, and before we do that, I'm going to go ahead and hand it off to Mike of Did You See That? We'll get back to my thoughts in just a moment.
Never did I think, when talking about the Land Before Time series with Anthony, I'd be referencing Spider-Man, but heck, here we are.
I'm gonna put some dirt in your eye.
Hey Anthony, what's going on, man? Thank you so much for having me back once again to talk about the Land Before Time series, and today we're on to number 7, The Stone of Cold Fire. Yeah, I'm sure by now Anthony's talked about the plot, the characters and all that good stuff, so I'm not going to bore you guys with a repeat of that. Essentially, I'm just going to go in and just say to you guys that this is yet again another mediocre installment. Nothing really different in terms of rating. I would still rate this probably the same as the last other outings, but I will say I noticed something quite unusual with this outing, which I'm not sure if anyone else picked on, but I felt like this Land Before Time movie was kind of the into the horror multiverse, kind of like Scream. And you might be thinking, Mike, what the hell are you talking about? How is Land Before Time like Scream? This movie is kind of meta, and that it takes the kind of jokes on itself. So there's a lot of times, for example, this movie follows the exact same formula as other movies where the kids have to go off, save the day, they get in trouble, the parents ultimately have to go find them and maybe help them out towards the end of the movie. The exact same here, but the parents actually reference that. They're like, oh, where are the kids? And I think one of the man parents is like, yeah, well, why we've been arguing, they've probably gone off on an adventure, and that is exactly what happens. These parents argue, the kids go off to find some mysterious item or try fix the issue, whatever it is. The parents don't even realize the kids are gone at this point. The kids then go and pretty much save the day, and all's well that ends well. You know, yeah, this is very formulaic with this movie. There's nothing really different here to add. As I say though, I did enjoy the fact that it did actually kind of take the joke on itself and realize it's pretty much the same formula as it always is. Yeah, again, in here, you know, the music isn't great, the songs ain't great whatsoever, and what makes it even worse is they actually give Sarah time to sing, and I feel sorry for Anndi McAfee, I think that's who voices Sarah, actually having to sing here. Yeah, the character, man, they do nothing to justify this character being in this full movie series. But I will say, Ducky Maguire, you've got respect, my friend. You've got my respect even, because you are the unsung hero we didn't even know that we needed, my friend. So yeah, Land Before Time 7, again, follows pretty much the same formula as always. Nothing really that different here. Yet again, another mediocre movie. 7 movies in out of 14. Are we actually going to get any improvement at any point in time? Who honestly knows at this point? But Anthony, thank you so much for once again having me back onto this collaboration, and I always enjoy collabing with you, my friend. So I'm gonna throw it back over your way to close out your remaining thoughts on Land Before Time 7, The Stone of Cold Fire. See you in the next one, guys.
A big thanks to Mike for joining me here in this video. Always a pleasure to have you on, my friend, and always a pleasure to hear your thoughts. We're halfway through, my friend. We have another 7 movies to go, and I'm really hoping now that we're in the 2000s that these films start to get a little bit better. They had to have changed things up a little bit moving forward. At least I'm hoping as we move forward that not only the animation, but the voice acting and maybe some of the story plot points are going to start to build up and be a little bit more exciting. I'm also hoping to see some more recurring characters, because I think some films in this franchise that have kind of tugged in the heart for me a little bit more have been the ones that have reintroduced characters that were in previous films. I love continuity when it comes to movies or series or whatever the case may be. I think that's why I'm a ginormous Star Wars fan. I love seeing things come together, be tied together, have characters from different stories come together in a way that feels cohesive. And so in the case of Land Before Time, I just want to see more of these characters that they've teased will return later on. Hopefully in an Avengers Endgame style where they all come together to save Littlefoot and the gang later on. I do not suspect that's going to happen, but a man can dream. But again, a big thanks to Mike from Did You See That for joining me here in this video. You guys can find the link to his channel down below in the description box. Go give him some love, let him know I sent you. And now to wrap up my thoughts on The Stone of Cold Fire. I was mentioning before that there's a message to this film, as most of these films do have. And this time around, as I mentioned, you have the character of Toronto, Petrie's uncle, who is the main villain of this film that the kids have to deal with. And we learn over the course of the film via the adults that Toronto kind of betrayed them in the past, having run away in a very dangerous situation, leaving a lot of their herd to end up getting killed by Sharp Teeth, while he ended up escaping and making up some sort of excuses and lies that changed every time once they would question him about it. They ended up exiling him from their area, and when he shows up all these years later, they're not really happy that he's around, nor are they really happy that he's talking to the kids and trying to get them involved in whatever he's trying to do. And at the end of the film, this film is really about accountability, as Toronto, of course, is defeated and has to come to terms with the fact that he is, has hurt people, that he has things to account for, that he has to deal with the consequences of his actions. And in a lot of ways, it's goofy, it's silly, it's definitely late 90s, early 2000s, made for kids, straight to video movie cheese. But for the most part, I think this movie definitely lands when it comes to accountability. And I think by the time the movie was over, I enjoyed the story with Toronto. I thought it was silly, I thought it was goofy. It is what it is. It's obviously for much younger kids, and so I have to kind of think about that as I'm reviewing it in my head. Is it something that I can really see myself clamoring to revisit anytime soon? Not necessarily, but I did find myself enjoying the film overall. I found it to be a fun time to watch, and I'm looking forward to the 8th installment in the franchise. And before I wrap this up, of course, I want to reference what Mike said there about this film being a little bit meta. Yeah, I did find it funny that the parents do reference the fact that they are just standing around bitching and moaning while the kids are probably out there already saving the day, which was exactly the case. I am very curious to see if moving forward the parents get a little bit more involved in trying to save the day along with the kids, which I feel could make for a far more interesting story. We'll see. Of course, in movies and shows of this era for kids, more often than not, it was the kids that were out doing the adventuring and saving the day more so than the adults. But, you know, it is getting a little bit old seeing the parents just sit around bitching and moaning with each other instead of actually doing something, especially Sarah's dad. So a big thanks to you guys for watching, and I definitely want to invite you to leave your comments down below. Are you a fan of this movie? Did you grow up watching this movie? Have you even seen this movie? Is this one of your favorites or your least favorites in the franchise? Whatever the case may be, leave a comment down below. I also want to invite you guys to hit that subscribe button and join me here on the channel, as we're going to be covering tons of movies, both new and old, like the Land Before Time series. And I also want to ask you guys, would you guys ever like to see a Land Before Time reboot? Maybe a live action version or a live action CG version or another new animated 3D version. I'm very curious to see what people would have to say about that. I also want to invite you lastly to hit that like button, because honestly it helps the channel out. And other than that, I'll see you beautiful people in the next one. Again, the link to my guest Mike of Did You See That is down below in the description box. Go give him some love, let him know I sent you, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye bye.